Sorry? Okay, so let's see what we have over here. So the Mishnah says, all the way at the bottom of Chav Gimel and the place, HaKaira b'Torah. When you're learning in the Torah, lo yivchos mishloish psukim. You have to read a minimum of 3 psukim for an aliyah. But in those days, they had a Matorgim. Many people didn't understand Lashon Kodesh, didn't understand the words of the Torah. So they had somebody saying over in the language that they understood. And if I'm not mistaken, someone was reading from the Targum Onkelos, because that was a language that was spoken, that was a language that people understood. And in order for it not to be confusing, every pasuk, one at a time, interlinear, is the Meturgeman had to offer his explanation. So the Valkyrie laid the pasuk, the Meturgeman explained it. Another pasuk, the Meturgeman explained it. There's a third pasuk, the Meturgeman explains it, and there's the end of the lead.
He explains it, or he translates it.
He translates it. Shlayita Meturgeman HaMetargim Alpeh. You shouldn't get confused if there's too many psukim to remember, you won't be able to. And the Meforshim asked, why is it that we don't do this anymore? Why don't we have a Meturgeman anymore? So one of the Meforshim say, the reason is because although Art Scroll is a phenomenal parish, and all the other Perushim are wonderful, they were not written with Ruach HaKodesh. And the only parish that was read public was Onkelos, I believe, and that was written Ruach HaKodesh. But to have any other parish that everyone's encouraged to read on their own, but that's not read publicly in the Bismedrash. That's what the Rabbi Elfin spoke out. Okay.
How's that? How do we know that?
How do we know that Art Scroll wasn't written with Ruach HaKodesh?
No. How do we know that Onkelos was?
I'm not sure how we know that. But do we learn that in the Gemara? A couple of we had recently. We learned about Tagim Medicine Nazil, Tagim Onkelos.
Yeah, Yernis Ben Azil, I think we had. A Daf Gimel or something.
But Rashi says the Turgamon's doing it Balpeh.
Yeah, he's not reading Onkelos from the side of the Chumash. He's saying it by heart.
So, I mean, he has it memorized, or he's saying the translation that he comes to.
When you read the Rashi, the Pashas, you think like what you said, that he's just saying what he's thinking. But what I heard is that the only types of targums that I read are things that are written in Ruach HaKodesh. So unless the fellow who's the Meturgeman can do freestyle Ruach HaKodesh, he's not going to do that. He uses targums. Yeah, this was just one thing that I heard over. I don't know that everyone's master to. But if not, it is strange why nowadays don't we have a Meturgeman? Why did they change the minute? They changed the minute when people stopped understanding Targum Onkelos. Now you need a parish in Targum Onkelos to understand what Onkelos is saying. By Novi, you can read 3 psukim at a time. And Rashi says, we don't really care if the Meturgeman gets a little mixed up, because there's no halacha coming out of it. What happens if you shloshtam shalosh parshas? What if each of the psukim was a parsha into itself? So then karin echad echad, then they only read 1 pasuk at a time. Medalgan b'novi. In Novi, you're allowed to skip from parsha to parsha. So sometimes during the Haftarah, we learn some psukim and then we skip to a later place. And if you look in the big Tanakh that we keep on the beam and the Agura, you'll see there's a lot of paper clips. And if there's like 6 paper clips for to show the place where things are. And sometimes like there's 6 paper clips in one Haftarah, there's a lot of jumping around. You have to remember which paper clip to go to first and which one to go to second. But there's no such thing. You never skip around in the Torah. And Rashi says the reason why you don't is Shashemeya is a kovetz and libe miyushav l'shmoya. If he hears the bakar jumping around, he's not going to focus well. Now, when we read the Mishnah, Pashup Pshat, it would seem that But Kamen Medalig is only relevant by Novi, because it already said the Ein Medalig B'Torah, period. Medalig Novi, so even by Novi, how much are you allowed to skip? Zok the Mishnah, Ad Kedei, Shelo Yifsek HaMetorgim. It takes time to turn. It's not like the Tanakh and Agudi, you can move straight to the page with the paperclip. Get the roll. So it takes time to roll. So as long as you don't roll far enough that the Metorgim will finish his parish on the last pasuk or on the last three psukim, and you arrive at your destination, then you'll be fine. But if it's going to be silent because the Metorgim has finished his piece and you're still missing, that's not allowed.
Yosy.
Because there's no Hara, Rashi says. There's no halachas coming out of it, so it's not so critical.
Paying attention? You said that you don't want to jump around in the third because then people don't pay attention. Is that what I'm worried about?
No, because our most important concern is that people should be paying attention by Chodesh. Do you know what we're saying?
I was going to ask the same thing.
Okay. The reason why you can't go so far, if you look at the end of Rashi on the Mishnah, if the tzibur has to wait while they're mishing and they're not entertained because the Metorgim has already finished, that's not covered for the tzibur. What do you mean? That's right. That's an old problem. It's not something that came up in that good. It's a universal issue. Zok to Gemara. When I was learning this, first I said, wow, this Tana must have davened in Agura. But now you're telling me everybody had a problem. Okay, Zok to Gemara. Hani Gimel Psukim Keneged me. The three Psukim that we're saying is the minimum for an Aliyah. We had this several times in the past couple of days. Mabasi Keneged Torah Navi Muksuba. The Metorgimin Yosy Pasuk. The Metorgimin in Chumash should only be Metargim one pasuk at a time. Uva Navi Gimel. And in Navi 3. Zok Gemara, if each of the psukim were a parsha in itself, then Kaira Echad Echad. Zok Gemara, where
About that. Oh, yeah. Where do we find it? There's only one place I know that it's considered a parsha by itself.
So the Gemara asks, where do you find three psukim in a row that are three individual parshas? So I wonder if you're thinking of the same three psukim that the Gemara introduces now.
I just know one. Vahi b'mtzaran.
Oh, you know one pasuk that's a parsha itself. We're looking for three psukim in a row that are a parsha for itself. And we're looking in Novi. So it's a Kikaya Mar Hashem Chinam Kartem. The next pasuk is Kikaya Mar Hashem Alakim Mitzrayim Yom Yarad Imi Barishayna. And the third pasuk in that sequence is Va'ata Mali Poi Nom Hashem. So this is in Yeshaya. Yeshaya Nun Beis, Pasuk Gimel, Pasuk Dal, Pasuk Hey are three psukim in a row that are all their own parsha. So there you would have to read them one at a time. Zok to Gemara, Medalgin b'Novi, vein b'Dalgin b'Torah. You're allowed to bounce around by Novi, but you're not allowed to bounce around on the Torah. Zok to Gemara, Ermini, Koire Achremois, who lanes Achremois? So Rashi says the Kohen Gadol lanes Achremois b'Yom HaKippur. Where did we get this from? So Rashi Mishneh b'Masechas Shuma. We all know this because we already learned Masechas Shuma. And then after the Kohen Gadol lends Achremois, he reads the Ach ba'asar l'chodesh. The problem is, in between what he lanes in Achremois and Ach ba'asar l'chodesh, there's a gap. V'yesh kan dilog. The Pashas Ach ba'asar l'chodesh is Shvi, the Pashas Emar al-Kahanim. So they're going from Achremois to Emar. They're going through an entire Parsha. They're doing something. He's landing in Achremois. They're missing through the end of Achremois, through the whole Kedoshim, and then to Emor up until the Ach ba'asar. And we just said that by Chumash you're not medalig at all. Remini kare Achremois b'Ach ba'asar v'akam medalig, and the Mishnah says you're not allowed to. Amar Abaye lo kasha kan b'chdei sheyifsek hatorgamin. When do we say you're not allowed to mish by Chumash? That's only if it's going to take so much time that there's going to be silence. The kan b'chdei sheyifsek hatorgamin to mish from Achremois to Ach ba'asar doesn't take enough time, and the Torgaman will not be finished speaking in the time that they mish, and therefore it will be seamless. For the Gemara, that's not what we just said in the Mishnah. The Mishnah seemed to say that the difference of Yivzak and Torgaman is only relevant for Novi, but by Chumash you're never allowed to mish. For Halakatani Medalgan ben Novi that common medalid, which must be referring only to Navi, ad kedei shelo yifsek hatorgemon. Michlal, you can clearly see from our Mishnah, the b'Torah klal klaloi, that you're not allowed to mish at all in the Torah. So how could the Kohen Gadol mish from the parsha of Achimois all the way through Kedoshim to Achba'asar? It depends on from where to where you're mishing. And Rashi is bein echad. Sheshnei medabrim b'davar echad. If both in Yonim that relating is going to be discussing the same idea, the ein kantir fadas, and we don't have to recalibrate our minds. It's just continuing on in the same subject matter. You're allowed to mish even from parsha. Parsha tilchach. Therefore, kilei mafsek turgamon. If it's close enough, if the other area that you're learning from is the same Indian, so people aren't going to get mixed up, and we can get there fast enough where there will be no pause, midalig, then you could mish. Sharei shneim be'inyan yom kippur medabra. The parsha Nachimois as well as the parsha in Emor of Ach Ba'asar are both discussing Yom Kippur. We must listen to Ketani Klaloi, our Mishnah that prohibits completely, without any exception, any type of mishing in the Chumash. That's Bishnei Yonah. That's when you're not sticking to the same subject matter. Kegoyin, Mipashish, Ngoyin, Mipashish Zot. That you wouldn't be allowed to do. And Zokimah, I'm going to prove it. For Tanya, we learned, and Rashi says this is the Nichusa, Medalgin b'Torah ve'inyan echad. You are allowed to be medalgin in the Torah if you're sticking to the same subject matter, like from Yom Kippur to Yom Kippur. Uvanavi, but by Navi you can even be medalgin from one subject matter to another. But Kam Dechan, where dilug is allowed in the Torah, and where dilug is allowed in the Navi, there's a condition, there cannot be any blank space.
Seems to me strange that just because you change the subject, you're going to lose people's interest. Usually it's the opposite. You have a new subject, people get interested.
So
No, on the same subject.
So Rashi doesn't say lose interest, like I said. So I really translated it wrong. Rashi says if they're both in the same meaning, it's enkantira fadas, confusion. So if we're focusing on one thing, then there's still their mindset is there. Start changing the subject, you got to start all over again.
You showed us in those days that people focused on that.
Okay. Tanya Idich, we have another bracha that says, Ein medalgin minovi l'novi. So if you are going to be medalgin, you're allowed to. But that's from within a sefer, from Malachim to Malachim. But to go from Shmuel to Malachim, that wouldn't be allowed. And Rashi says once again, She'en kantir v'yoyse midai. It's not terribly confusing. Uvenovi shel shnei moser, but in Trei Osir, which is a whole bunch of small little svarim that are put together, medalig, you are allowed to go from Navi to Navi. As long as you're not going backwards, as long as you're skipping forward, you'd be allowed to do it, but you're not allowed to skip backwards. Okay, Zok Tehillah Gemara Vayter. Hamaftir b'Navi, the person who gets maftir on the Navi. Now we're going to soon see that this is something that doesn't have great honor. It's not a big covet. At least in those days, it wasn't a big covet to say the Haftarah. And therefore, someone who's matriach himself to prepare the Haftarah, which doesn't have much fanfare to it, is going to be rewarded with other honorable activities, or other kibudim. So Rashi says, "Hamaftir b'Navi, misharogil lahaftir b'Navi." So if you notice, the Mishnah says Hamaftir b'Navi. Rashi says misharogil lahaftir b'Navi. We're going to see why. So Tiknu Chachamim Shei Paris Eshema. So it says Hamaftir b'Navi, the person who's Maftir b'Navi, who Paris al Shema. He will be Paris Shema. So the problem is, Shema, he would have already said before, before the Navi. Right? Shema comes before we lay. So that's what Rashi says, Harogil lahaftir b'Navi. Since it's a person who's normally prepares Haftarah, we have to give covet to our Balkayr. We have to give kibudim to the Balkayr. Since the fellow is matriach himself to prepare the Haftarah, because of that, we'll also give him the kibud of being Parish al Shema. In the event that he missed davening, we'll give him the kibud of being Parish al Shema. So Parish al Shema, Rashi learned yesterday. Let's say a group of people miss minyan, and they miss Shema, so they can come after davening, and they have and they say Baruch Hu, and they say the first Baruch Hu Krishma. They say it's like a half a tefillah. So that's considered a covet. For the late comers, it's considered a covet. It's like getting like when we were young yeshiva, it was still exciting to daven Mussaf on Chalamoid. It was like getting the breitel to daven Mussaf at the last minute. Like I know a guy who used to love davening Mussaf so much, but he was a young bacher, so they never were machaber him, and he was always like, hanging out at the goal. Maybe he'll get a goal. And finally, like, you just have to wait till the latest. So he's having chachas kibasikin, and he finally got a stellar the last minute of the day. Sometime guy from Mussaf, and he made his day. Zog to Gemara. So who overleft that table? He'll also daven for the Amud. Rashi says lahoitzi is a tzibur b'kedusha shebetfilah. So once again, Maftir b'novi comes way after Shemoneh Esrei. So you mechaber him to be about tefillah if he did come on time, because again to reward him for saying the Torah. I'm sorry, for Mussaf. That's right. But who knows his kapov, and he also will do Nesias Kapayim, which is a little bit difficult because aren't all Kohanim do Nesias Kapayim? So there's a lot of talk in the Rishonim about what this means, but there are a couple of different svaris that I heard. A is he starts the bracha a little bit before everybody else. That was one shot. There were other shatan who learned that if there's more than 10 kohanim, not everybody has to go up to the duchen, which is definitely not how we pass it. V'imhaya cotton, and if this was a child, so it was a child who learned after, so he cannot be nice as kappa. And aviv rabbi oivin al yadeh, then his father or his rebbe will take that covered for him. Okay, so up to the Marviter, then it won't be relevant. We're talking about only if he's a kohen. Okay, and it's not only if he's a kohen, his father has to be a kohen too.
Oh, really?
Okay, Zok to Gemara. Cotton kair b'toyer u'matargim. A cotton is a lot of lane, and he's a lot of being matargim. Avol einay paris al shema, but he can't be paris al shema. Rashi says because when he's laning, he's not being moitzi anybody with a chiyuv. But when he's being paris al shema, when he's rabim, when he's trying to be moitzi people, a cotton cannot do that. A cotton cannot daven for Amud once again because he's being moitzi people. And a cotton does not do it. Rashi tells us in koinu, like he mentioned, only if he's a kohen. She'ein kavod shel tzibur liyas kfufin lebrachos.
Yosy, we don't have a chiyuv to hear laning.
We have a chiyuv to hear laning, but I don't know if they're being moitzi us with the kriya. Like if you miss a word by laning, do you have to lane it again? I don't think they're being moitzi. There has to be kriya Torah. It's to be by kriya Torah. I don't know if there's if we're being moitzi. There's no bracha before kriya Torah to be yoitzi in specific kriya.
Didn't the Mishnah previously say that if we don't have a minyan, then we can't fulfill the chiyuv of Kriyas Torah? Wasn't it the language of the previous Mishnah?
Yes, you can't lane barabim.
There's a chiyuv on the tzibur to lane barabim.
Right, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's being moitzi somebody. There's a chiyuv for the Torah to be lane. Maybe a cotton could do that. Okay. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's poichayach or poichach. Does anybody have a kudus in their Gemara? How you pronounce this? Not only don't I know how to pronounce it, it's also a shiloh what it means.
You have another case like that where we have to.
Poichayach.
Say that again.
The answer took flippantly to a video. We have another case in Yiddishkeit where the tzibur has to do something and a kohen is allowed to do it, meaning the people themselves don't have the chiyuv. The chiyuv on the tzibur.
Well, Kriyas Torah for sure is a chiyuv on the tzibur. It's a chiyuv on the tzibur, right?
But
there's other chiyuvim that are on each person individual.
right, do we have another case like that?
Like a communal type of chiyuv?
Yeah, that a kohen and therefore a kohen can do it. I'm sorry, a kohen can do it.
I don't know. It's a good question.
Because I never heard of something like that.
But there's other communal chiyuvim like the shtalavek bezdin, but for sure a cotton can't do that, right?
It's poichayach, Yosy.
Pachech? Sorry? But it says Torah b'Torah. What is the Arshma Taichet? I thought it meant Mamish Koyer B'Torah. I thought a Mamish means B'Torah.
I mean, you could make a, what's his name, Yosy? You can make a Kavachim. Madach if one person is, if there's a chiv on one person,
Right.
a cotton can't be to him. So a tzibur to be yoitza, a cotton can't be yoitza.
Yeah, but
But there's no being yoitza.
that's right. Just a chiyuv for tzibur to have it lane. Let me. Maybe I'm making a mistake. Maybe a cotton can only read. Let's see what it says over here. Cotton karvatar yachalalas latar velikos. Kivich krisatar he rak b'chtei lashmi alam. Vein a mitzvah gemur. Yeah, that's what he says. Okay. So let's see what the Gemara says weiter. The Einai Noises Kappa. Pechech Rashi learns is someone who has torn clothing. Rashi says Kol Shechrav Nirin, if his knees stick out. Maybe somebody wearing shorts. Someone whose knees are sticking out, someone who has torn clothing. There are others who learn it's much more torn than that. So the halacha is Paris Hashema. He could be Paris Hashema. Why? Rashi is told he is mechuyev. Umatargim, and he could be metargim. Avol ain't a Torah. Why can't he read the Torah? Technically, he should be able to read the Torah. Rashi should cover Torah. It's not covered for the Torah to have someone with torn clothing there. It's not appropriate that someone who's tattered should represent the tzibur, but we're going to soon see it could be there's a question of davar shebe'erv as well. He can't have it for the Amid Noises Kappa, like Rashi says. Suma, someone who's blind, Paris Shema, he could still say Shema, even though there's things that he might not be able to say in Shema. Umatargim. If he never ever saw any type of light, Eina Paris al Shema, he's not allowed to be moiti the oilam with Kriya Shema.
There's no problem davening in shorts.
Is there a problem davening in shorts? I mean, you're yoitza, that's for sure. Okay.
A bit of bathing suit. Just, never mind.
I once davened Shachris for the Amid with a talus in a bathing suit. You remember what? It was a very sad.
I remember.
But a shidduch came out of it. So
Remember that too.
What's that? Okay. No, I'll never forget. I was putting on my talus, and someone says, "Like, are you davening in a bathing suit?" I said, "I just came off a boat. I could daven in a bathing suit." It's Yana Shabbos. Okay.
On Shabbos.
Sorry.
On Shabbos.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see what Toshas Pechech is. Oru, he's naked, the Yachaf and barefoot. Here's a kodesh metargamin artiloi upachi. The lesson, the pachi utakam shel orim. So Rashi learns it means he has torn clothing, his knees are showing. Toshas seems to learn he's orim. The chaim pirish of Alphas, the pachi is el oisu shalovus begadim kriyim. He's wearing torn clothing. So Alphas learns like Rashi, but Toshas says it means orim. V'achanami masha perakam the Mesechus Kedusha. The ain't able of teva. A cotton cannot daven for the Amid. Kasha, my ear you cotton. Vos epis only a cotton can't be the chazan. I feel God nami ain't able of teva. Elon kein is malazikman. The halacha is you're not allowed daven for the Amid if you're just bar mitzvah. You have to have a full beard. Kidatanya soy perakam the chulim. This malaziknai. Then you royu laso shliach tzibur v'lered of teva. Avo be'in nachaloi. So why is our Mishnah saying that it's when someone becomes a gadol? The Shleimer, the Hasan Mairi, B'tainis Tzibur. That's speaking about a tainis Tzibur, where you need someone to be poilos big Yeshua on behalf of Klal Yisrael. K'titan b'tainis. They meridin of Ne'atevel zokin v'rogel. Umishim smell zikna. Umishim tipule meruba. He has a lot of responsibilities. But for a regular tefillah, even anyone who's not a cotton kedam v'ramid. But the Ksani Hasan gabin ismal zikna. Roy la shlich tzibur. Hainu li shlich tzibur b'kviyas. And even that it says that you need to be in Nismal Zikna, that to be the permanent Shlich Tzibur. If someone's just going to daven once in a while, Yochal Liyosh Mishahevi Beisayis. The Loi Kemosh appears Rashi Sham, it appears to Marilit Ki Shofar, Uli Manis Pranis Al Tzibur, Uli Lokos Lanabas. Even for davening, a permanent Baltfilah needs to have a full beard and once in a while, you're allowed to send up anybody who's a gadol to the oven. Okay. Very nice a kapov. Mashma, heavy base cyrus, he's a kapov. It's mashma that a cotton has two cyrus. He could do it. The kasha, the soif per kamen the chulun amr the nice a kapov out in small ziknai. So Toshas in kasha. So he says v'yesh loymar the hidden little dozen marim by hanim gedolim lilmoid ulis chanas. That we say that with two cyrus you can go. That it says in little goes that a cotton could duchen. That's only to learn. So we have children going up to duchen nowadays because they're learning. A cotton by himself is not allowed to duchen. And where do you need to be zaken? That's lisa cup of todu bikfis. So but proib alma yochalu lisa cup of apple bishul shalom shmalaziknai telachdukin nafshavachan. So there's three levels. There's a cotton who's under bar mitzvah. He could duchen with his father, so he should learn how to do it. Then there's the cotton then there's a gadol, but he's not in the small zikna. He's allowed to duchen, but not steady once in a while. And that's in addition that he's allowed to do it. It's also so that he could assert himself as a kohen. Right? If he never goes to duchen, then people will think he's not a kohen. And once he's older and he's a full beard, then he duchens permanently. So I'm not sure exactly how that works. I'm not sure exactly what a full beard is. Okay. I'm not sure if it needs a face beard either.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about that.
Okay. Zok to Gemara weiter. My time. What is the reason why?
That would answer the question. That would answer the question because most people have a full beard, even if they don't have enough beard. They'll have it.
That's right. My time. What is the reason why the person who gets the Torah, why does he get all these other people? What does that mean? Covered lahaber lefnei ateva. We give him the respect to let him down for Amid. Since he made himself available to prepare the Torah, that's hard work that doesn't come with fanfare. Therefore, they gave him a bonus that they gave him the breitel. So when the Gabba asks you after he gives you Maftir to daven Mussaf, he's not asking you for a favor. He's paying you because you had to suffer through the Maftir, right? So it's the opposite. He's doing you a favor. It's funny how times have changed. It's a okay. Rabbi Barsimi Amar Mishum de Asal in Suye. It's going to lead to a fight. Rashi says Mishum in Suye. Hadover Bala de Machloikis. Ani Maftir. I have to do the heavy lifting. By the tablet, did you get out of the COVID? How you took? I'm doing the heavy lifting, and you get it done for them. What a chutzpah! So therefore, we don't want to lead to a fight. My binayu.
Why wasn't Levi the Haftarah?
Because it's hard work, prepared. Vice versa, it wasn't so glamorous because it's not the Torah, it's the Navi, right? My benai. What's the difference if it's outs covered or outs fighting? So tomorrow, what if the Baltfil doesn't get paid? If he doesn't get paid, so therefore, Zakrashi, the hacha into your leka, there's no fighting because they're not going to fight outs covered. Into your leka, we should cover ika. If I don't get paid to prepare the Haftarah, but you're going to get paid al chazan, what a chutzpah! I do the hard work and you get paid. How you talking? That's in suya. But if the balfil is not getting paid, it's only shalach. So then I wouldn't have a problem with the fight. But there will still be a taina al covered because it's the covered that kedav v'ram. There's other rishonim who learn that the covered b'china means it's assumed that he was paid to prepare the Haftarah. But if he did the Haftarah for free, then they'll be on suya. Frank to Gemara, Zok to Gemara.
Which is good because instead of making everybody happy by not giving anybody money, make everybody happy by giving everybody.
Yeah. Tanan. Maya cotton of a rabbi urban ayada. Frank to Gemara. I amrit mishum antsuye. Cotton bar natsuye. Cotton's going to be fighting. Elamai mishum covered. So what you're going to have the second trial covered. Cotton bar covered. Cotton's going to be fighting over covered. Ella. What is the covet over here? The covet is his father or his rabbi who would have taken his place. They would have an issue, and therefore hachanami rabbi. We're concerned that the father or the rabbi will get upset because it was him who would have had the opportunity to daven for Amid. Ula by Rav had a question from Abai. Cotton parcheach. What if you have a cotton who's a Pekech? Ma'u sheyikra b'Torah. Is he allowed to lane from the Torah? So Rashi tells us, Gadol Pekech hu da'aser, a Gadol Pekech is aser, b'shum v'lo yirah b'cha ervas dover. It's only because his erva is uncovered, because his clothing are torn. Aval cotton ain't a muzer. A cotton doesn't have the problem of v'lo yirah b'cha ervas dover.
Didn't we just say a cotton can't read from the Torah?
We said a cotton could read from the Torah. Right? Remember, because it was a communal chiyuv. So our cotton ain't a muzer. Adilma loy must been cotton labab. So maybe since a cotton doesn't have the problem of a pekech, would we let him lane even though he's a pekech? So pekech ma'ashi yikra. Amr lay, if you're asking the question of a pekech, ask me a better question. Why don't you ask me a question if a cotton's allowed to lane the Torah when he's naked? Because the question is, well, if the whole question is that since a cotton's not muktuv on that, so then ask me a better question. Can a cotton lane the Torah when he's not dressed? Or my time aloi, why didn't you ask the question? And you know without a doubt for sure a cotton orim cannot lane, we should cover tzibur. It's not going to be covered for the tzibur to have a cotton get up who's not dressed. So hachanami we should cover tzibur. So by the same token, why would you ask a question if a cotton percheach could lane? The same covered tzibur that you yourself would apply to a cotton arm, we could apply that to a pechech. So clearly, a cotton of pechech may not lane it. Suma paris al shema. Tanya, Amru lo le Rabbi Yehuda. They told Rabbi Yehuda, Harbe sofu lidrush b'marchav. Why did Rabbi Yehuda say that a cotton, a suma could lane, right? If you never ever saw any light, you could not be paris al shema. The question is, who said you always have to be able to see? Who said you always have to see? I don't think I ever explained why a person who's blind can't be paris al shema, because he can't say yetzer ha'moyros. He never had enough ha'moyros. So that's why the Tanakama says that the Tanakama says in the Mishnah that a suma could be paris al shema, even though he himself didn't see light. But the Yehuda said if he never ever saw light, he never had a benefit from light. If he once had a benefit from light, he could say yetzer ha'moyros. So he never had a benefit from light, he can't. Frank Gemara, just because someone never had that experience, he can't praise your abundance of it. Harbu tzafel lidish b'merkava. Nobody ever saw Ma'aser Merkava. Nobody did. Yet they darshaned about it, and they discussed it, and they had appreciation for it. V'leiro, I should be a man, and they for sure never saw the Ma'aser Merkava. So why do you want me to say if I never saw Ma'aser, I can't make a bracha yetzer ha'moyros? I can't be much anybody with it. What's the difference with people? What's the difference with people who never saw the Ma'aser Merkava but still darshaned about it? Rabbi Yehuda Hasam Bavnasa the Liba Talyam. When it comes to Ma'aser Merkava, it's totally in a person's deep understanding of the subject matter. And the people who are Durish in Ma'aser Merkava are on a very high madriga, and they're able to understand the details of what it's all about. Hacha, it's not a question of understanding, it's a question of having to have had anah. If you're going to praise Hashem from Irish, you had to have had a benefit from it. Well, less like anah. And this person who never saw, he was always blind, so he never had enough from Ma'aris. And since he never had enough from Ma'aris, he can't make the bracha yetzer ha'moyros. What are you talking about? He could have enough from Ma'aris, even though he himself didn't see. I'll show you Rabbi Yosy's example. The Tanya Rabbi Yosy, Kol Yomai Hayisi Mitzar Al Mikrazeh. I was always struggling to understand the following puzzle. It says, you're going to be feeling around in the afternoon, or in the morning when it's light, just like a blind person is going to be feeling around in the darkness. And Iver, what's the difference if it's Afela or B'tzarayim? And Iver can't see anyway. So why does it take Iver B'Afela? Until I witnessed the story and everything became clear. I was walking in the darkness, and I saw a blind person. He was walking, and he's holding a flashlight. Exactly what do you expect to accomplish with a flashlight? You can't see anything anyway. Amali Kolzman Shavu Kabiyadi, as long as I'm holding this light, b'nei adam roi noisi, people can see me. So therefore they'll see if I'm about to walk into a puddle. From holes, from thorns, or from I'm not sure what barkonim are, but there's something that I can get hurt with. Does he say what barkonim are? So the light helps me, even though I can't see with the light. I definitely, I'm sorry? Right. I definitely benefit from it. It's like the very famous story with a group of priests were, I'm sorry, there's a priest, a minister, and a rabbi. That's the way it always goes. They were golfing together. And the people in front of them were going very, very slow. And it was backing up all of the people behind them. And they were starting to get frustrated. Move your mamish holding everybody back, and it's wasting everybody's time. So finally, they were very frustrated. They called over the manager, and the priest says, "What's the matter with these guys? They're holding everybody back. Move and push them on." So the manager said, "With all due respect, these people are blind in front of you. So it takes them a little longer." So the priest says, "Oh yeah, I bless them. They should be able to see. I bless them. They should be good." And the minister going, the rabbi says, "If they're blind, tell them to come back at night. Why would they come to golf during the day, hold everybody up? Let them book time at night." So that's mamish what it is, Iver Bafela. So now I know they come during the day, so somebody else could tell them where their ball went, because they themselves can't see.
What happened to the minister?
He also said some narcissism thing. I don't know. Okay, Zok the Gemara right there. I skipped that. I wanted to get to the punchline. Okay, Zok the Gemara. Kohen sheyesh biyad of mum. What happens if a kohen has mumin on his hands that's colored, which would attract people to look at them? Lo yisas kappa, he's not allowed to duchen. Rashi says, people are going to look at it.
We don't look anyway. We're not supposed to look anyway. So what's our problem?
We're afraid that if it's something unusual, people are going to look. So if someone looks, the shash and ain't of chaos. Why? Because the shechin is on the hands of the kohen, and therefore a kohen shouldn't go up if his hands are going to be a spectacle. So Moti mentioned that Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky during laning, he's staring straight at the Kahanim the entire time. And I remember we had a guy in my class, a Kohen, and the first time you duchen, when you come to Yeshiva, at the beginning of Elul, will be Rosh Hashanah. So as we're going around after davening Rosh Hashanah to say Kichomtev to Rosh Yeshiva leans over to him and tells him, "Don't you ever duchen in my yeshiva again before you learn all the halachos of Nasias Kapayim from cover to cover." So he watches to make sure they know that what they're doing.
I heard this once from either the Shlomo or the Rav, that they were explaining to me why, according to some communities, young children don't go to the mikveh. Because they look. And what do you mean they look? Those don't look. You don't look at everybody. But they explain, but children do look. But children don't look.
Interesting. I remember growing up, there was someone who lived in Toronto. He had injured hands, and his hands were all purple. And I don't know if he was a kohen or not, but if he would be a kohen, he for sure wouldn't be able to look him, because I remember as kids we were always staring at it. So Yisas Kappa. If his hands were dyed with sitis, which is some type of dye, again his hands will attract the eye. Because people look at it. They also say that a kohen is not supposed to wear happy socks when you do it. He should just wear plain black socks, because you don't want people staring at the kohen. Okay. The moment that we're talking about that will prevent a kohen from duchening are only in places where they'll be seen, such as panav, yadav, v'raglov. What's up? It's raglov. So Rashi tells us, v'raglov anoites kapov choylitz minolo. He takes off his shoes. Kidetanya. And therefore, if there's something unusual on the feet, they'll look at his feet. If you look at his feet, then you might start looking elsewhere. Who are Bahaknios? Bahaknios are also people, I think it's also some type of disformity on the hand. What does he say? Spotted. Okay, so if he has spots on his hands, if he has spots, all right, the white spots or dark spots, Akumais, if his hands are bent over, Akushas, they're bent off to the side, they're somewhat deformed. Lo Yisas Kappa, he shouldn't do. Omer Basi, Chifni, people from Haifa. Rabasi is saying that Hungarians are not allowed to duchen. If you're a kohen and you're Hungarian, you're not allowed to duchen. And you're going to see why. Chifni, people from Haifa, ubishni, who are people from Beis Sha'an, they stutter, and therefore lo yisas kappa. Because once again, they're going to be a spectacle. Tanya Amihachi, we learned also Braisa, and Merid Lifna Teva, you're not allowed to allow people to down for the Amid, lo anshe Beis Shan, not people from Beis Shan, which are referred to as the Bishini, lo anshe Beis Haifa, which are referred to as the Chifni. Lo anshe Tevunin, and not the people from Tevunin. Why? Because they have you're going to soon see not these people, but other people. Hungarians have a problem with. They shekarin the alpha ayin. When they pronounce the aleph, they'll sometimes pronounce it as an ayin with an ayin alpha. When they'll pronounce the ayin as an aleph, where will that turn out being very bad? Where is there a problem between an ayin and an aleph? We're going to soon see the Gemara is going to bring up where it could cause a problem with the ayin and the aleph. Oh no, Rashi
we all do that. None of us pronounce an ayin properly. We all pronounce an ayin like an aleph, except for Yisrael Cohen. He
Yankiv. He says Yankiv. But look what it says in Rashi. What's the problem? If they would duchen, when they would say Ya'er Hashem Panav Elecha, they would say Yar Hashem Panav. Yar is a lashon of klola, a lashon klolahu. Ki yesh panim shel yisparshu lashon kas. Sometimes panim can be a lashon kas. So therefore, if they make the aleph of Ya'er, which means Hashem should light up for you, rather than and instead they say Yar, Hashem should curse. So then your kohen, instead of giving you a bracha, is going to be cursing you. So therefore, people who don't pronounce clearly that it's an aleph, we don't have a problem. So nowadays we pronounce everything like an aleph. It's not a problem. The problem there is they pronounced the aleph like the ayin. That was the issue that they had. Oh, so here's my favorite part. If you were a Levi, you would not have been able to sing with the Levim. You know why? Mishum da'avi kolech. Because you have a deep, thick voice. It's not a nice voice. Can you imagine? He comes over, and Bechia tells him, Shum Bar Rebbe, why would he do that? And say, you have such a bad voice. If you be a Levi, you lose the job. It's that he say something like that. And look what he answered back. Also, Amalei Lavua. So Shum Bar Rebbe came to his father and says, Bechia insulted me. Bechia told me that I have such a bad voice that I would get rejected from the Levi squad. Amalei, Zilei Malei, you give it right back to him. Look at what's going on over here. Zilei Malei, Kishata Megilla Etzel Vechikisa Lashem. He was a Hungarian. He was a Hungarian, so he couldn't pronounce the ches. When the Hungarians say Hala, they don't say Chala, they say Hala. Why? Because they can't pronounce the ches. And his name was Rabhia, not Rabhia, because he couldn't pronounce the ches. So when you say the word Vechikisi Lashem, you can't pronounce the ches. So you can say Vechikisi Lashem. I'm hitting Lashem. So Lo Nimtis Machar from Megadav, so you can give it right back to him. You could tell him, you think I'm bad because I have a bad voice. You curse Hashem every time you say Vechikisi Lashem. So the shaila here is what in the world is going on over here? What in the world is going on over here? First of all, Reb Shimon wasn't a lady. Reb Shimon Bar Rebbe wasn't a lady. So what's the whole purpose of it? So he brings down in the Yalkut Urim that there's a pasuk in Shir Shirim that we learn from there that a dayan, a rav, a nasi, anybody who's in charge has to be perfectly in a physical way. He has to be perfect. Let me see if I can look him up to quote the pasuk. The pasuk was, it says in Shir Shirim, it says kulach yafa reisi umum ein bach. That's the pasuk in Shir Shirim, and in Maseches Sanhedrin, the Gemara tells us that any mum that passes a kohen or a levi, any mum that passes anything for anybody for anything, automatically disqualifies you from being a nasi and disqualifies you from sitting on the Sanhedrin. So oy bazoi, that was the taina. The taina is that Reb Shimon Bar Rebbe, his father was Rebbe, his father was the nasi. So Reb Chi was trying to tell him, not insult him, so he's trying to tell him, since you have something that would disqualify you from singing, if you were a Levi, you won't be able to take over the Nisias after your father because you have a mum that will not let you be a nasi. So Rebbe told Reb Shimon to answer back, maybe in a Chanami, but Reb Chia was on the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin also have this limitation, and since you have you also have a pkam, you won't be able to sit on the Sanhedrin.
A voice is a physical mun.
I'm sorry.
A bad voice is a physical mun.
If it's a psul for a Levi, yeah, a Levi who has this Sanhedrin, you cannot sit. And the members of the Nesios and of the Sanhedrin have to be perfect. So basically, Rabbi was saying, if you could be on the Sanhedrin, I could be a Nosi. So it wasn't stam an insult. They were discussing something that was real, something that was practical. It still is a little uncomfortable, but that's what happened. But I guess they said it the way it is. But what I love is that Reb Chia was a Hungarian. He couldn't pronounce the ches. That got me excited. If anybody ever makes fun of an Hungarian that he can't pronounce the ches, you could tell him Reb Chia had the same problem. And his parents were Hungarian too, and they named him Reb Chia. Right? So basically, they were proud of that they couldn't pronounce the ches right. But they probably Italians from you. You can't pronounce the ches right. We pronounce it right.
You know, Yosy, it's interesting because it's basically what it's puzzle min haduchnen, but not puzzle min kahunas. So basically, it's showing you it's not that you yourself are a bad person, but it's only all the COVID of the oilam that we're doing.
Not COVID. The problem is that they might look. We don't want them to look.
Maybe his name is Rabbi Hia, not Chia.
That's right. Okay, so let's read the Gemara. Amar Avuna, Zavlagon lo yises kappa. A Zavlagon should not lane. Rashi, that means ein of zolfos. He has a problem. He tears a lot. If he tears a lot, once again, that's something that people will look at. There was somebody who lived in the town of Ravuna, in the area of Ravuna, will have a paris yade, and he would duchen even though he was very teary-eyed. So that's someone who everybody knew. He was no longer respectful. Everybody was used to him, so nobody gave him a second look, and therefore there's no problem. But if it was very common and everybody, no one took a second look, then mutter. If someone is blind in one of his eyes, lo yises kappa. And it's very interesting. Rashi says, and there's actually a shaila if this is a sumo who you could tell from his eye that he's blind or not. There are those who learn since you could tell from his eye that he's blind, people might look. There are those who say a sumo who you can't tell that he's blind. That's something people are going to look at. So it's a shaila and the Rishonim how to understand this. And he also was blind in one eye. But once again, he was well known in the city. No one would take a second. What if most of the people in that city had hands that were tradesmen hands, had hands that were dirty from the same type of coloring? So in that city, it was something that was very common, then it would be mutter. So Vaitachaj is not worried about guests.
They're like bleach, like dyes.
Yeah, if they worked in that industry. Someone said, I'm not going to daven for Amid if I'm wearing colorful clothing. And we're going to see in the Gemara why someone would feel that way. But I'll spill the beans. It's because there are certain avodah zaras that didn't go that way. So let's say I refuse to daven for Amid with tzuon. Then even in white clothing, you don't let him go. But the Gemara tells because you're afraid that he's connected to an avodah zara. What is this? The sandal ain't over. I refuse to daven for Amid with an open type of shoe. Or with a shoe. He can't even daven barefoot. Again, because these are signs that he might be loyal to an avodah zara.
What about a closed shoe?
No, I don't think I made a mistake. I don't think it's a sandal in opposed to a closed shoe, a shoe versus barefoot. Yeah, that was my mistake. Okay, agula. What if you made your tefillin round? So your tefillin is in the shape of an egg, let's say. Instead of it being a box, it's an egg. So the halacha is sakana, sai to sakana, because since it comes to sort of a point, if something bangs in it, it could puncture and penetrate your skull. And the ein mitzvah, and you're not yotze the mitzvah tefillin because it doesn't meet the specifications of what tefillin has to be. What about nosnal metzvah? You put your tefillin on your forehead, not on top of your head where it belongs. Or, in other words, beinei necha, you touch literally like the Tzedukim, not like Chazal teach us. Oya pas yodai. Al yotcha, literally on your hand. Harezu derech haminus, that's the way of the Apikursim who don't accept Chazal. Sipan zov, what if you wanted to cover your tefillin with gold? V'nosna al beis unkel lishaloi, and you put it, I believe, on your elbow, and that's because you want to be able to show it off. In other words, you don't want it in the area where it's covered. You want to show off that you have gold tefillin. Harezu derech hachitzonim. What does a chitzonim mean? Rashi says, "Oh, so Beis Yad Ugly is on the sleeve, on top of his, not on his elbow. It means on top of his sleeve, on top of his clothing. So he made it gold, and then he put it outside where people will see it. What is that? It's b'nei adam aholchen achrei daitam chutz midas chacham. So it doesn't mean someone who's showing off. It means someone who does their own thing, and he doesn't, and it's outside of the scope of what chacham said. The purpose of the film is to be nice for you. It doesn't have to be displayed for everybody. The reason why Zov is no good is it says L'mantia Teres Hashem Beficha, and Rashi she akoil b'behemoth tahira. The film has to be made out of a product of a behemoth tahira, and gold doesn't meet that specification.
And the ink, I guess, is made out of the behemoth itself, meaning the paint, the black.
I don't know where that comes from. That doesn't come from Simonim.
I don't know, it's because the gold doesn't.
But you're not writing gold. This is you made the bottom out of gold.
No, you painted it. You overlaid it with gold.
The bottom.
Yeah, you said you overlaid it with gold.
Okay. So I don't know how ink is made. Is ink made out of an animal? I think it comes from plants.
I got no idea. You asked me that
Right.
question. a couple days ago.
But could be if there is no way, if you can't get ink from animals, then it's not like it.
But I'm not talking about paint. I'm not talking about the paint, the black.
Oh, the black paint that you paint the outside of it.
That's what I'm saying.
I hear.
overlaid it with
I hear.
black paint.
I hear. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. My time. What is the reason why if someone says "Ain't over that we don't let him down for him at all? Shema minus nizrikaboy. Zakrashi haminim oivdavadzar makbidim mechas. Oivdavadzar are makbid not to wear colorful clothing, only to wear white, and they're makbid only to do their avoida barefoot. So if someone has these preferences, we're choshid that maybe he's a shikol oivdavadzar. Hoyzet filos egulas akonavet mitzvah. Lema tanina lahad tanarabah. Maybe we could bring a raya from our Mishnah to a different price that says tefillin mirubois halacha l'moshe mishina. Tefillin have to be perfectly square, and the angles have to be 90 degrees. V'amar Rava, and Rava said b'tafran u'be'alachsayin. In two ways we have to make sure that they're perfectly square. B'tafran, and Rashi says kishu toifer beis ma'shavam. When you're tying the bottom together. When you're tightening up the tefillin, tying them together, you have to make sure you're not going to squash and distort the shape. One of the ways to measure if something's perfectly square is you measure the hypotenuse, you measure the diagonal. And the diagonal, we know there's a Pythagorean theorem which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So if you measure the two sides of the box of the tefillin, you have to then measure the diagonal and make sure, using the Pythagorean theorem, that it's exactly square. The Gemara uses something that's a little bit of an estimate, and that is 1 finger or 1 inch or any unit will be 1 2/5 ba'alachsvein. It's not precisely that, but it is quite close.
Which is good because the Lord tells us that as long as it's that.
It's good enough. That's right. There's a little bit of a clearance allowed. I hear. So you see from here, our Mishnah is the same thing. You're not allowed to make it round. So maybe it should be raya to this price. So that's we know. From our Mishnah, you don't have to raya. Our Mishnah is speaking where it's in the shape of an egg. So it's oval. It's not perfectly round. And that's where there's a danger of it puncturing the skull. But if it was perfectly round, from our Mishnah's perspective, you wouldn't see any problem. That's why you need a brisa, the Tanur Rabbanan, to tell you that if it's perfectly round, it's also not good. It's got to be perfectly square. So Avada, our Mishnah is not arguing on the brisa, but you can't bring a raya from our Mishnah to the brisa, because from our Mishnah you would only know that it's outlawing an egg-shaped tefillin, not a perfectly round-shaped tefillin. And from the brisa, you see perfectly round is not acceptable either. It has to be perfectly square. Okay, let's stop over here.